Welcome, welcome, welcome. Lisa, thanks for joining me. And we're going to hear a bit about Lisa's story. My gosh, it is incredible what's been happening in this girl's life, just because she's been making some powerful choices. And we'll hear a bit about that later. I'm so excited to have just had a snapshot of some of the amazing things that have been going on for you, Lisa. But for everyone watching, this is a series of 10 workshops which are to share with you about emotional heart healing. So I am Miriam Smout. Redemption Mumma is my alter ego, my other name. And that's very much because for me, I just have had a heart and a passion to get back the lost stuff, redeem the things that I've lost in the years in my life. And I don't think I know anyone that can tell me they've not had that sort of an experience to one degree or another. So I help battle-weary women, of which I was one, heal deep hurts, reclaim their past personal power, and unlock God-given destiny. So I'm guessing if you're here, you're someone who is in that category, that you've experienced some hurts and wounds in your life. You're hungry for some healing. There's more. There's more that you can really step into and I guess embrace and live out in your life. And, there's some purpose and destiny that maybe you haven't tapped into and unlocked yet. Now, I was in exactly that same place. For me, the unraveling, I call it the unraveling, happened around 45 years of age. I was a mother of 5. I was married, only just. On a number of occasions, it looked like that was going to not be a successful relationship, but I give thanks that today, I think this year was 35 years of marriage. Now, that is just a miracle, and that is not because of me, but because of me doing this journey. So I want to share a bit about that today. I felt that I was challenged in myself just to share a little bit more about what I've done, where I've come from, and how I've stepped my way through this. Because what I've realized looking back in hindsight's a pretty amazing thing, right? When you can look back and go, that was that, and this was this, and I shouldn't have made that decision. And but we can't turn back time. We can't get it back, but we can change the future. We can change our destiny. We can change what's ahead for us by the choices that we make today. So for me, I call it living in the gap. There was this huge gap between where I was living and where I wanted to be living. Where I was living, I was exhausted, I was hurting, I was frustrated, I was in a real downward spiral, and I just couldn't see my way through. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know how to step out of it. And that's the very thing I hear from the many, many women I speak to. I hear this same thing. I just don't know what to do. We know there's something wrong. We feel it in our emotions. We feel it in our body. We feel it in our heart. But it's true. We just don't know what to do. So I didn't know what to do. I wasn't taught by, in my upbringing. I wasn't taught at school. I wasn't taught as an adult. You're expected to catch this stuff, but many of us don't. I know I didn't. So on the journey of being hungry for the more and hungry for the change and hungry for something that I didn't even know what it looked like, really, I started a journey which, in hindsight now looking back, took me through some steps that became steps that I saw I needed to step through each time I wanted to break through to that next level. So I want to talk a little bit about those 5 steps, the 5 steps that I walked through, and now I help women walk through. And as you walk through these steps, if you go step by step by step, it's a really powerful foundation, scaffold to make that journey from where you are now to where you want to be. Will I ever get there? Probably not to the point that this side of heaven. But what is really exciting is that I'm seeing huge shifts, huge changes, massive turnaround and massive transformation in my own life, day after day, week after week, month after month. And looking back to where things were, to where things are now, it's amazing to see that transformation. For me, being a mother of 5 children, and I homeschooled them as well, which was a choice that I made over 25 years. Something interesting that I didn't realise until my oldest daughter said this to me was that I had been neglecting myself. Now, this is something as a mother, that to walk that line between looking after you and looking after everyone else and knowing the balance, that's a really difficult place to find. Now, when my daughter was about 16 and she was at that age, you know, thinking about boyfriends and so forth, we were talking about relationships, and she said to me, you know, Mum, when I get married, I don't want to be like you. I don't want to lose myself. And that just hit me so hard. I was like, you're kidding. That's what I've modeled to you. I've modeled to you, be a mum, get married, and lose yourself. It was a really big turning point for me. It was a point where I knew I actually had to do something, because I didn't know who I was, apart from, you know, mother of 5 children and struggling day by day. I did not know who I was. And when I started to reflect back, I thought, did I ever really fully know who I was? Did I ever fully live out of that? And I felt the answer was no. So that gap had been there for me probably from the get-go. But, you know, in your teenage years, you're exploring life, you're pushing the boundaries, you're really trying to discover what you can and can't do, and you live life way too much over the edge, and you have that capacity. And then you get into your 20s and you're starting to really try and frame up your identity. You know, you might have done your studies, you've got your job. You know, there's some exciting times that happen in your 20s that start to help you to kind of get established into who you are. And then in my 30s, something really shifted, and I didn't connect with it until late into my 30s. But in my 30s, I started to really question a lot. Question, well, who am I? Why? What is this life? Is this it? Is this all it's going to be? And I see the 30s as being really reflective years, because you start to think back, oh gosh, did I miss something then? Should I have taken another pathway? You start to get to question a lot about your life. And then in my 40s, I just hit a wall. Those questions had never been answered in my 30s because life was just too busy. And then in my 40s, I call it the unraveling. It was no longer something that I could juggle and try and live between that gap. I just fell right down into a hole. And at the time, it was awful, you know, depression, just all the stuff, like, you know, the struggle of daily just getting up, living life, the pain and all of that stuff that's just there relentlessly. And then trying to manage life and everything that was happening as well. So those years of the unraveling, in hindsight now, I look back and I'm so grateful for them. Kind of wish that it had happened earlier, because then I may not have wasted another decade of just continually trying to live life like that. But when that unraveling happened for me, it then really pushed me to start finding a way through, finding a way out, finding a way to bridge the gap. And so for me, that turned up in the form of a few friends. One of the friends I'd known for a long time, and I saw her after a few years, and her face was radiant. And I was like, what has happened to her? This is not the person I knew, a few years ago. And as I leaned in and I pressed her and tried to find out, what have you been doing? What is it about your life that's changed? She'd gone on a journey of really starting to unpack some of the pain, unpack some of the wounds, turn and face them. And to be quite frank, it sounded terrifying. It definitely didn't sound like a journey that anyone would choose to go on, right? When you've spent your life trying to push all that stuff down, suppress it, ignore it, deny it, hide it away in the cupboard, close the door, why would you open it up and let it come out? And it took me a little while, and it took a little bit more unraveling until I was at a point where, I either had to take action or I was done. So I did take action and started a journey with these ladies, working step by step. And honestly, none of us knew what to do, but we all knew that we didn't want to live how we were. So to connected with them, I think there was about 4 of us, maybe 5. And in the end, it was down to about 3, because this isn't an easy journey to follow through with. As we pursued this, we started to really find that the key, the first step, the first thing that we needed to understand or be willing to do was to get aware. We were aware, but we'd been so busy trying to shut that awareness up and push it down and suppress it, that actually allowing that awareness and to sit in that awareness, that was a really hard, challenging thing to do. So I'm just going to quickly share with you these 5 steps that I've used to take that journey. This is a little ebook that a beautiful, beautiful girl, Hien, created for me. So the whole purpose, I guess, for me was like really connecting with the beauty inside of me. I knew there was something more. I knew there was something that was worth being valued, treasured, and loved for, but I just did not know how to connect with it. So this is my journey going through to really starting to connect with what that truth or that genuine me was, who that was, and what it looked like. So I call this the 5 steps to emotional heart healing, to really truly become the beautiful you that you deserve to be. And I believe that we are also hungry to become. So I will put a link in the description, and you can always download this and have a look through. A little bit about my story, a little bit about the journey that I took. And then, of course, something I really believe is that every single person can actually do this. Bridging the gap. It's that space that stops you living in freedom and really flourishing. When there's been pain, when there's been trauma, when there's been disappointment, when there's been hurt, jumping over to the other side of the healing and the wholeness, that can actually be overwhelming. And it's almost like I could see I was here and I wanted to be there, but knowing how to get there, it looked like not even a tightrope. It just looked like I had to leap, and if I leapt and fell, that'd be the end of me. But very grateful for these 5 steps that I've worked through to really connect with who I truly am. So the first step is the shape up. Now, this is the piece where we have to connect with the truth of who we are, the good, the bad, and the ugly. If we don't get aware of the things that have actually shaped us up, then we can't do anything about it. It's like if you don't allow yourself to feel the pain, you can't heal the pain. And it's a hard thing to actually embrace because pain is something we naturally want to run away from. We want to avoid. And so if we can avoid pain and find the shortest way to get out of it, then we will definitely usually choose that. But to actually turn around and face your pain, not only become aware of it, but start actually processing it, that's what these 5 steps are all about. Now, what I discovered is that I'd been to psychologists, I'd been to counselors, I'd been to therapists, I'd done a lot with the mind, you know, the cognitive stuff. And while it had its place and it helped, what I found was it did not give me the real freedom that I was looking for. And, you know, I've been through the affirmations, daily affirmations. I've been through, you know, journaling, all of these things. And I'm not discrediting that. They all have a place. But I found that in that period of time, I felt like a duck on water. On the top, it looked like I was fine. But underneath, I was paddling crazy hard to stay afloat. You know, having to do my declarations, having to do my affirmations, having to do all this stuff that was actually just keeping me afloat. But underneath, I was still paddling real hard to stay there. And it became a little bit exhausting and it became unsustainable in the long term. But what I discovered is that all of the thinking and the processing of my thoughts actually was what my feelings came out of. And my feelings, that emotional part of me, that was really messy. Maybe I was managing my mind to some extent, but not enough that my feelings were like following in line. And I started to wonder why. Why is it that this has not been enough? And what I realized is that I hadn't connected with the memory that had shaped that part of me up. Some of the things for me that I've had to process is sexual abuse as a child. When that kind of thing happens to you, it really impacts you at a very deep, deep place, a very deep level. Now, going back and connecting with that memory, that was a really incredibly hard decision to make. I had pushed it aside, even to the point that I'd lost conscious awareness of some of the things that had happened. But I knew that for me, the manifestation of how I was living in intimacy, even with my own husband, there were things that weren't right there. And it wasn't him that needed to change. It was me that needed to change. And it wasn't until a friend who had also experienced quite severe abuse in her life had been given the book, The Wounded Heart by Dan Allender. This is a really fantastic book. I highly recommend to anyone that needs to process abuse in their life, sexual abuse. She asked me, will you read this book with me? And I'm like, yeah, sure. You know, I don't need this, but let's read the book together. Now, as I read that book, it started to almost make me shake and tremble on the inside and the outside, because I was reading some things that were bringing back memories into my life that I was like, hang on a tick. I actually need to read this book, because now some things are coming back to me that I had suppressed. I started to see that the memory is the place that needs the healing, because the memory is actually what was triggering the thought, that was triggering the feeling, that was triggering my actions. So this shape up step, this is the part that we start with to really get aware of what's going on in our life, or what has shaped us up. Now, getting aware, step one. The next step is the shake up step. So the things that have shaken your life, the challenges, the difficulties, the trauma, the pain, we then need to revisit these. Now, this is not to get stuck back there and get trapped, but we must accept the influence that they've had on our life. I had to accept the influence that abuse had on my life, and even on my marriage after quite a lot of years, there were things that would come to me, and I'll be very frank, that in that time of intimacy, I would hear myself saying, "Don't hurt me, don't hurt me." And I was like, where the heck is this coming from? Why am I thinking like that? Why am I even saying this? And it wasn't until I started to actually revisit the shake-up. The first thing I needed to do was name it. It was sexual abuse. And to actually speak those words out of your mouth, they can be a pretty hard thing to admit. So in that space and that second step of really identifying the shake-up, naming it, really calling it out, this is a part of the process that's really powerful. Now, as we process through the shake-ups, we don't want to stay there too long, right? Because that's not a very happy, nice place to be. We just need to stay there long enough to identify them, name them, and then accept the influence that it's had on our life. Because what's the other option? The other option is continuing to suppress it, push it down, and, you know, as a duck on water, maybe floating beautifully on the surface, there's only so much work that your feet can do to try and keep you afloat. And eventually you will sink. And that's where I was at. I was sinking. So the first step, the shape up, really identifying the things that have shaped you, both the good and the bad. And then the shake up. What are those things that have really shaken you? Now, obviously, working through all of those things in one hit is probably a little bit too much of an ask. But what I always suggest is to pick something that's kind of not the absolute most 10 out of 10 thing, and sexual abuse and these kind of violence and stuff, that trauma that is brought into your life, maybe that's a 10 out of 10 thing, and it might not be the best place to start. But if you go to a shake up in your life that maybe is, you know, between 5 and 10, a broken relationship, or, you know, the impact of the mother relationship or the father relationship, some of those things, they can be 10 out of 10. You'll know for yourself, but pick something that you can start working through that you feel is going to be doable, if that makes sense. Just doing the 10 out of 10 things on your own, that can be hard, but I'll talk about a way that we can do that at the end. Now, after shaping up, what has shaped you, what has shaken you, the next step is the step up. Now, this is something that we kind of do, but we don't often sit and really process it, let it really frame up ways that we've stepped up and out of our pain and our trauma. We have survival skills that we hang on to, say in a situation like abuse. A survival skill can often result in your life of just not trusting men. And so that's the way you survived back then. But then that can impact the rest of your life, because you will never be able to trust again. So the survival skills were only meant for that period of time for us to survive, right? If you're lost on a desert island and you're drinking a tablespoon of water a day and you're eating berries and rocks and leaves, and then you get off the island and you go live somewhere where there's all the food and water you want, but you still keep living out of the survival skills, it just doesn't make sense, right? And yet that's what we do emotionally. The ways that we've survived emotionally back when we were children or experiencing that trauma, often we just continue that same process, and they don't serve us well anymore, because they actually cut across us having a fruitful, flourishing life. So we need to exchange the survival skills for life skills, things that are going to set us up for the rest of our lives and serve us well. So those default ways, we need to start investigating them. Is that a survival skill that's going to serve me well for the rest of my life? Or was it just meant for then? So identifying the ways that we've stepped up and out of our trauma, some of those ways will serve us well and some of them won't. And so in this step up phase, we're going to figure out what we need to leave behind and then what we will take with us. Now, when we are emptying ourselves of stuff that we don't want anymore, it leaves a vacuum. And that space, that vacuum, is something that our heart and our mind will always want to try and fill. So it makes sense at this point to start to be very intentional and to seek out some ways that are going to help us step up in the future that will serve us well. So for me, for instance, creating a Metacog, and I do the Dr. Caroline Leaf neurocycle app most days, that's one of the ways for me that helps me stay grounded and helps me identify my toxic thoughts, my thoughts that are just going round and round and round and round in circles and aren't serving me well. So daily creating a Metacog is just a powerful way to work out what's going on in my mind, what's going on emotionally. So that's the third step, the step up. Once you've sort of teased out what you don't want to take and you put in a few things that you do want to take, step 4 is the setup. And this is the key to success. This is the action plan, that we start to create an action plan that we're going to implement either daily, weekly, monthly, yearly, strategies that are going to help us to stay able to achieve the goals and flourish and really be intentional about how we live life. If we are going to live in an emotionally healthy place and we're going to stay grounded, it's not going to happen by accident. I'm sorry if that's a shock for you. I'm sorry if that's a disappointment for you. You are not just going to fall into this amazing place of being all put together without effort. The truth is, there is nobody in this life who has achieved success without incredible struggle and battle. And when you look at the stories of some of the most successful people, there's not very many that just, were born with a plum in their mouth and it just landed. No, most people have had to fight and really do everything in their power to be set up to succeed. Now, when there's trauma and there's chaos and there's conflict and there's inner turmoil and there's all that stuff going on, sometimes you just never really get to the point of being able to push the pause button. So I'm just going to get off for a little while and take a break. We often don't have that luxury, do we? So it does often take a breaking point. It does often take an unraveling until we actually decide, you know what, this is it. I'm drawing a line in the sand and I'm not putting up with this anymore. I'm going to do whatever it takes. And to be honest, that's the place you've got to be in. You've got to be in a place where you decide, I will do whatever it takes. If it takes me leaving that violent relationship, if it takes me leaving that toxic relationship, if it takes me saying no to my friends or my mother or my father or my children, with the potential that it may mean that I lose that relationship. Without that attitude of saying, you know what, I'm going to do whatever it takes, then you're going to be held back. The intentionality, the strategy, the choices you make, they are going to be hijacked or ambushed, because being willing to do whatever it takes is what it's going to require for us to really set ourselves up. And then working out what is a daily thing I need to do, what is a weekly thing I need to do, what is a monthly thing, what is a yearly thing, and being very strategic about the way we do it. So for instance, a daily thing for me is the metacog. Another daily thing for me is quiet time where I sit in that space. I've created a space. So I listen to the still small voice and I get that guidance. I get that intuition. I really connect with what that is telling me to do. They are some daily things. Exercise is a daily thing. You know, the things that you need to do on a daily basis. Then the weekly things, I know once a week it's important for me to do something that's just for me, whether it's go for a walk, go for a swim, which I love to do, go on a date night with my husband, go and play with my little grandson. You know, those kind of things are like, I don't do them every day, but I need to do them once a week. And then once a month, something that my husband and I now do, he volunteers on a what we call the Hotham Valley steam train. And so he actually is a fireman and he has to light it up and get up at 3 a.m. So once a month I'll go with him and we'll go and book some accommodation, because I don't like the hut they live in. It's full of spiders and snakes and everything else, and I'm maybe not that adventurous. So once a month, you know, I'll try to do that. And that gets me out into the forest. It gets me out into nature. These are the things that help my heart to sing and to really be replenished. So it may not happen monthly. Maybe it happens every couple of months. So none of this needs to be, you know, set in concrete. But do you get the idea? Do you get the idea of setting things up that are going to help you to flourish, help you to grow, help you to survive, but not just out of survival skills, but survive in a way that you're intentional, you're strategic, you know what you need to do, so that you can manage your thoughts, you can manage your emotions, you can connect with memories that I don't know if I'm ever going to come to a point in my life where there is no memory that's going to be a painful one. But they don't scare me like they used to. I don't feel like I have to suppress them. I now can say, oh, well, that's coming from somewhere. I'm just going to put that over here. And when I've got that right time or space, I'm going to dig that out and start investigating it, rather than have it, you know, cycling and looping around in the background and eating away at me and having me get into messes and cycles and behave badly and all of that stuff. Now I can manage it and I can actually know, yeah, I'm going to come back to that and set a time, set a plan. And, you know, sometimes life happens and the plan goes out the window, but at least you know it's there. You know what it is. You know you're going to go back to it, because that's the intention that I set for myself. And then when we are intentional, at least if it's delayed, we're not just letting that thing randomly swim around and consume space in our mind and our heart that is causing us pain and causing us frustration. I don't want to be that duck on the water anymore that's paddling like a maniac to stay afloat. When the winds come, when the storms come, I now have some strategies that I can walk myself through, and I can manage them rather than have them manage me. I can't tell you how much of a difference that's made for me in my life, and I'm so, so grateful. All right, the last step. Now, I actually think this is the hardest step of all, to be quite frank. This is consistency. This last step is the one that is the daily, weekly, monthly, yearly choices that we have to make to continue growing. I love gardening, and that's why a lot of what I do and a lot of the way I conceptualize things and I communicate things is through a gardening sort of analogy. If I just let my garden grow, it would look like a shambles within a pretty small space of time, right? So there's a few things I have to be consistent with. One is weeding. Now, I don't love weeding. but I love a garden that's not overtaken by weeds. Our mind's the same. Our emotions are the same. If we want to live in a space where we're flourishing, our emotions are being managed, stuff's coming at us, but it's not going to, drown us, it's not going to wipe us out, then we've got to be continually digging out the weeds. And for me, the weeds are things like triggers. What's triggering me right now? The weeds are things like fear, anxiety. Those kind of weeds need to be dug out. And if I don't dig them out when they're teeny tiny, then before long, they actually take over. So digging them out when they're teeny tiny means being aware of them. Getting awareness means understanding how it shaped you up. And then you step through the 5 steps again. It's just a rinse and repeat kind of cycle. The weed comes. It's your choice whether you attend to it now, or you wait till it's a bit bigger, or you wait till it's really hard to pull out. But does it make sense to get onto it early? When you start consistency, when you start to stay consistent and be intentional, and emotional heart healing just becomes a way of life, then it's like it doesn't become so much of a big deal. But the good thing is, when it does become a big deal, guess what? It's triggering a memory. It's something you've got to go back to. It's something you've got to process. And so there you go through it again. And I love this is Hien, a beautiful artist that has helped me with some of my design work. Just beautifully says it. Just keep flowing. Go back, move on, go back, move on. That's what consistency means in our life. But that's why I think it's the hardest step, because it's a daily choice. It's like, today, what am I going to choose so I am consistent? What am I going to do? What choice am I going to make so that I do choose for me? I do choose for my emotions and my mind, my thoughts, to be me managing them rather than them managing me. So those are the 5 steps that I feel frame up a really powerful journey of healing, emotional heart healing. They're what I use. And what I find is that while I might not sit and go, oh, this is the shape up, or step 1, often I can look back and go, oh yeah, I shaped that up there, and I really pinpointed the shake up. And yeah, I can see how I set myself up for failure or set myself up for success, whichever it was, by the choices I made. Now I'm going to actually reframe that action plan, that setup. I'm going to add something else in. I'm going to be adjusting it. And I think it'll be a lifelong journey, because now at this stage of my life, in my 60s, I'm experiencing things like being a grandmother and a few new things that I didn't experience at any point back in my life. And I'm looking at my dad in his 80s. My mum passed away earlier in the year. And the plan was that he would die first because he was the sick one, but it didn't work that way. Now, who would have thought in your 80s, 87, he's needing to learn to use a washing machine, a microwave, a phone? These are the things that he depended on my mother for all of his life. And I look at him and I think, do you know what? I don't think we'll ever be done. We're going to have to continually make sure we've got a process that we can manage our thoughts, manage our feelings, manage the challenges that come up in our life. So they're the 5 steps, and I wanted to walk through them. I also just want to share that I am working quite hard on a 5-step emotional heart healing workshop, which will be a 6-week workshop where I'll help you walk through each of these steps. There'll be a video that you can watch. So this will be via email. You'll get a video. It's about 10 minutes long, and then an action sheet. And then there'll be some workshops during the week that you can turn up to. And there'll be a few things that can happen there. We can have some Q&A, some teaching, and some heart encounters. So heart encounters are where I think the magic happens. It's a really powerful, powerful process to really connect with what's happening at that deeper level. And I'm going to start encouraging women to step into vulnerability and to do that in that group context. And what's so incredibly powerful about that is you actually get to see that you're not the only one. You are not the only one who's been through this stuff. And yet often we've been so focused on our family or our work or our life experiences that we just get a bit isolated perhaps, and we think we are the only one that's ever experienced this awful stuff. And that's just not true. And so if we can get into community, we can get into supporting each other, we can get into loving on each other. And instead of us women, we tend to, in the past, I've seen that, it's easy for us to compete with one another. Well, gosh, who needs to win? Let's just be in a relationship that is so supportive, so undergirding each other and cheering each other on, and just accepting that we're all going to have different journeys. There is no right way. There is no wrong way of doing it. The way that you do it, if you're flourishing and you're growing and you're overcoming your challenges, you are doing amazing. So I will stop this page, and I have someone here today who is doing amazing. Oh my gosh, let's unmute you, Lisa. Unmute yourself. Lisa joined us a few weeks ago, and she's been on this journey for a month, right, Lisa?
Yes, month. That's right. Man, what a month.
What a month. Your transformation in 1 month is honestly supernatural, I would have to say. And so last time when we spoke, you were in this really crossroads of a decision. Do you go back to what was a very abusive sort of relationship, or do you pursue a new life with some doors that were opening?
Mm-hmm. It was, and as we were going through these steps, I didn't really take the time to think about, that's really what was happening. So in the former sessions, writing them down and thinking about them, a month ago, I really, just a beautiful thing happened, and I found alive and free, and Miriam, and we connected so deeply that I was like, yeah, absolutely. And I found myself preparing for the meetings, not just waiting to the last minute once I could figure out the whole time thing. And I tell you that, yeah, so a week ago, I was in a cabin down 100 miles from the Gulf where I'd hit, and the floors, sorry about that, the floor it got really, really wet, and the floors were buckling and they were all coming up, and I was like, oh my goodness, I'm gonna have to move now. But I was in between, like, where do I go to work? What's opportunity was with what? And one of them was a gigantic leap of faith. And in the meantime, I have this marriage that we've been estranged for 6 years, and this man was not nice. And there's a lot of pain associated with that, to the tune that I was so afraid to contact him for a divorce, not because I didn't want one, because I was afraid he would find me again, and then I would be living it all over. So what had happened is, I had prayed and prayed, for direction, for healing, and we actually had a phone conversation, and he was willing to come kind of rescue me, and that he still loved me, this and that, and the other thing. the right things that you would want to hear when you're really, really vulnerable and you don't know which way to go and you're scared. And we had talked at the session before about perseverance and pushing through the pain or pushing through the, whatever it's going to take to get to that next level. What do you do? And that is really hard and it is painful and it's scary. But I thought to myself, well, what do I do? Well, it came to the point where it was kind of push or shove. You need to go to California for this job. And on my way to California, I decided to look at how I was going to get there. And I was scared to death. I had an old car and I had to leave most of my stuff behind because I have this big dog. And if there was room for him, that's how we would have taken. But, that was important to me. So I realized that we were going to be going through a part of New Mexico I didn't want to go through because it's really desolate. And I thought, you know what? I'm going to go through Texas this way. And as I hit Dallas, I thought, why don't I just stop in Austin? And why don't I just confront this man face to face? Because I think I need to know what is my issue, what I need to see something. So, all along the way, I'm praying for the car. I'm praying for guidance. I'm praying for God's will. I'm praying for us to get there safely with no problems. And something just said, you need to stop in Austin. So we stopped in Austin. I saw this man. The sight of him made me just like, oh my gosh, there is no way I want to touch you. I don't want you touching me. I don't see anything about you that I even want to see again. However, I figured, he offered to get a room for me and the dog, and we did some things. But the beauty of it is that all that time I was preparing for the conversation. What are the things I need to talk about? And prayer. Oh, the thing is that we did finally sit down and we were going to have these talks about where we were at and if there was a future for us. And as I opened my mouth, I had a memory. A strong memory of why I had to rehome my rescue animals, give up my dream, and leave my land. And it was because of him. And I became uncontrollably upset. It was just powerful. And I had to stop and kind of say, okay, stop. What is it that you're doing here? Okay, so that was a really bad emotion. I got that. So let me pray about this. So I picked up my Jesus Calling book, and that's my Bible right now. And I held it to my chest, closed my eyes, and I did the prayer of, I asked for protection, to allow both of us to speak our truths to each other, and that we would be open to receiving those truths so that God's will could be done and that Satan would be bound so that we could have this time. That man's face, when I picked up that Bible, I thought he was going to fall off of his chair and run out the building, like through the window. It was like, whoa, what's wrong with you? And as soon as I got done with that prayer, I said, okay, thank you for waiting. I apologize. I really had some serious, there was some emotion that came over me. And that scared him so much that he pretended that he had to get called out for work. And he said he would be back. He left. He never came back and he never called me. And he didn't come back the next morning. So I said, well, there we go. Mm-hmm. And, I kind of giggled about it. It was painful a little bit. Like, really? Well, geez, if I wish I would have known, I would have gotten 4 hours of sleep and took off last night. But, I was, but I forgave myself for that because, we really had time and it was, to me, it was surreal that, did I just do this? Did I just go and give this man a day and he just turns his back on me, but then thinks that that I'm still going to give him another chance. Oh, no, 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 you do not. No. Now, the old person in me would have been going back and forth, talking to him. But immediately God said, Lisa, you know what? This is not the man for you. Even the conversations, I was asking myself, who was I? Why would I? This man has nothing. He's not even, and I don't want to say that I'm better than him, but um, my faith has skyrocketed so high.
Mm,
And, the healing and the love of me, of the girl inside me,
mm,
has grown so much that I was telling you that I feel like I was in a horror story. And then they got just pulled out and
mm,
planted in the garden without me even knowing that I was moving. And so I'm trying to catch up emotionally with the process. Like, wait a minute, how did this happen?
mm,
Because the old person would have been devastated or would have settled.
mm.
Because why not? Why should I keep? I had another 20 hours of driving to do to come to a place that I've never been to. Um, oh, there goes I got to charge my phone. Just
Wow.
the beauty of it. It's amazing that I acted like a grown up, like an intelligent, well rounded, emotionally stable woman, as opposed to, you know, this. And God blessed that moment with, with that. Just all it took was a prayer. And I was like, wow, dang, he took you flying, didn't he?
Oh, Lisa, that's just so wonderful. It's so exciting. Like it was. I just admire your courage so much that you uprooted, you've traveled 4,100 miles, how many
21.
hours ever that was, like days and days of travel. And on the
Yeah,
journey, God has shut a door for you and showed you, you know what, that's done, that's over. And now you can fully invest in your own heart, your health, and now some incredible doors of accommodation and work, and wow, the opportunities that have opened up just because you made that choice.
because you know what? Because I made a choice a month ago to trust to trust in the process, to trust that God is, there. Yeah, I don't have the words for it right now because
Yeah,
I guess what
yeah,
I'm hearing and what I'm sensing is to trust him,
yeah, yeah,
and to just really give it over, turn it over, and trust, but believe in that trust as well.
yeah.
And boy, it's it's been a long time coming, but you know, I know that that for somebody, the story, but yeah, to get in an older car with my dog and drive for 4 days straight, it was 2,200 miles. Um,
Oh,
you know,
22.
winging a prayer. It was like we made it. The car's just fine, really, really dirty, really, really full of dog hair, but that's all. That's nothing, you
Mm,
know,
mm,
nothing.
yeah,
And I'm just like, do it. It is scary, it's very scary, but I can stand or sit or I'm amazed that I did it.
mm,
Like I confronted the person that hurt me and I told them no.
mm.
Nope.
Yeah. And you said yes to you, which is just the most incredible thing. And that is one of the choices that can be so hard to make when you've been through a lot of trauma and a lot of abuse. And so well done to you, Lisa. And this is only 1 month in your journey. Wow, what's ahead for you?
I have no idea, but I'm gonna keep doing the work because I want to know. I keep saying, that not like we were talking about persevering and when I looked at him and I looked at what I know, the skills that I already have, and what I want to learn, and I was like, man, if I can heal myself, well, no, if I can use these things in the community to heal what has, the past trauma that has stopped me
Mm,
from reaching for that mountain, for going to the top.
mm,
Um,
mm,
that little girl is amazing. She's just like, oh wow, I can have fun because you're now going to take care of me.
mm,
I don't have to take care of you anymore and keep you, off, whatever. I don't know how to say it, but it's yeah, it's beautiful. They say, just ask God, yeah, ask him, trust him,
mm.
and beautiful life waiting. And so
Yeah.
I'm waiting, I'm working, I'm gonna keep working really hard.
Lisa, you asked, but then you did what it took. And
Right.
that's the part that we often miss. Sometimes we'll ask and we'll keep asking and we'll keep asking, and we're just not ready to take action. But when we're ready to take action, honestly, shit hits the fan.
You
But
got it.
yeah, it totally does. But that's what's got to happen. You've got to actually be able to do that man, let's not call him that, but that man had to hit the fan. That man had to be separated from me. I had to be separated from him. And it's when it all comes out, when all of that stuff does hit the fan, then it actually it gives us that space to be able to start making some decisions that have to be made. But could you have done it on your own, Lisa? Could you have
No,
done it by yourself?
I have not done this by myself. This was intervention. When God sent me to Alabama, I kind of had a feeling it wasn't for that job. And the story, I go there, COVID, my car blew up, got bit in the face by a dog, lost my job. But these were all to put me somewhere where God could get my attention, really get my attention, because there wasn't a soul around me for miles and miles. I couldn't drive, couldn't run away, couldn't drive away because I had no wheels. And then, I could, what was I going to do with this whole eye thing? And, it gave me time to, well, to be alone so that I would listen to that small voice and that I would or that I would yearn to hear it, but to trust him completely. Um, and I didn't give me any options. It was, well, you do it or you don't, where are you going to go? Because you can't get out of here. It's a long walk. And
Yeah.
then, to then, start letting him draw me closer to him. And when that happened, I could probably write a novel or whatever, just on figuring out what the words are for this. But it was so powerful that I went searching for that Jesus is Calling book. And I have not, well, I've been a little off with my driving to get here, but I keep going over things in my head, and I talk to God like he's sitting next to me all day long. The things that he's opened up for me are amazing. But this time, this is not like, okay, it's Sunday, I have to go to church. No, I wake up and I say, I need to, first of all right, God, what are we doing today? What is the plan? I need to be prepared for it, and I need to be blessed for it. I mean, I need blessings today, because I have this obstacle and blah, blah, blah. But alive and free and this whole emotional healing, it came attached to a video that my niece had sent me, and she had no idea what alive and free was. And there it was. And I listened, and then I started doing the work, and I took it. I was not working, so to spend that kind of money, not knowing where my next month, where my next meal might be coming from. I mean, what God blessed me this year through COVID. So I was okay. I was better than surviving, which is crazy. But I mean, I ended up with more than I had when COVID started, with even after everything, which was really crazy. But I took it. I said, you know what? I'm going to value me and I'm going to heal. And this sounds like this is what God wants me to do. As soon as I said yes, it was a week later, they called me for this job. It was, you know, then, you know, and then things just, he was closing doors like, don't question it, just go. Go.
Yeah. Look, Lisa, it's so exciting to follow your journey. It's so exciting to see what's happening and the changes, the transformation for you. Can't wait to see, like, every month, you know, something it's really exciting. And you have made some powerful choices. They have been choices out of complete faith, like blind faith, maybe even jumping in your car and traveling the distance you have. But look, it's such an encouragement. You're so inspiring. So keep going, because I can see just the change in your face.
Oh, really?
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, I can see, you know, there's life there, there's excitement, there's anticipation, there's hope. So thank you for sharing. Thank you for being part of this today. And yeah, I'm excited to keep following your journey. Well, look, we'll leave it there for our workshop 8. Take care.
Thank you.
And yeah, we'll see you next week.
I look forward.